Welcome to the iNetrepreneur Radio Show. We are so honored to bring you your host, the ultimate celebritypreneur, connecting businesses and celebrities worldwide. Winner of the Networking Organization of the Year, best-selling author, magazine publisher, trainer, and owner and founder of Network Together and the iNetrepreneur Media Network for magazines, TV, and radio network. We're excited to bring you your host, Mr. Robert W. Jones.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Robert W. Jones. Yes, the W is for, wow. And I'm glad that you're here with us today. I'm here in, supposedly sunny Arizona, but today has been raining and we've had just wonderful greenery sprout all around. And it is actually, for me, I don't mind feeling the humidity because guess what? It's just really good for the face. So, again, I'm just excited. And I'm also still glowing. We just had our in-person Unchain Yourself Professional Women's Conference. It was such a success. I want to thank the staff. I want to thank our speakers, our panelists, our sponsors, and of course, all the attendees that went there. There's quite a few women and a few good men. But I also want to talk about that our next event is coming up, and it's a virtual event, and it's on 10/20/2022. So we're having another event coming up, and I'm excited to hopefully be a part of that. So I'll just ask permission from my wife that I can be a part of that so I can celebrate. And what is so great about celebrating the Unchained Women's Professional Conference with wonderful women from around the world at this particular conference. Also, I want to remind everyone that you can still reserve a specific date in the forthcoming #1 international best-selling book, The Art of Connection. Go to 365 Days of Transformational Quotes to receive your coupon code. We still have an early bird special. It's $197 and it's regularly $550. Again, such a deal to be a best-selling author. Not just a best-selling author, but a #1 best-selling author. Also, not only that, this book is in the Library of Congress. It also comes with a community of other authors from our first 2 books. And we also have the Art of Connection Summit, which I will talk about on a different time, but I'll say this much, it's coming up on September 22nd. I'm going to hold off 1 second. I'm going to play a quick commercial and I am going to be right back. All right. Well, I also want to talk about NT Events. NTEvents.net is our calendar where you can find networking events, academy classes, pop events, summits, and our industry's first iNet Connect interview panels and so much more. Also, please go to Facebook. You can go to facebook.com/iNetrepreneur Radio. Just like us there. Tell the world that you want to come be a part of the iNetrepreneur Network family. And also, please subscribe to our magazine. You can go to iNetrepreneur Network Magazine. Again, iNetrepreneur.magazine.com, and you can subscribe there. Oh my goodness, so tongue-tied today. Well, I'm really excited. I'm going to bring on our first guest. We were talking a little bit, before the show, and our first guest is Lisa L. Levy, right? Levy. And she is a speaker, best-selling author, podcast host, and founder and CEO of Lcubed Consulting. You can please contact her at 480. Let's scroll that through.
Scrolling through.
334-9562, or email her at lisa.levy at lcubeconsulting.com. And yes, I'm going to let the secret out. I can see where that L3 came from with the LLL in the name. Well, I'm really excited that you're here today, Lisa. Thank you for joining me in our escapades on the iNetrepreneur Network radio channel.
Robert, I'm so happy to be here with you today. I'm sorry I did miss the event last week due to a health issue, but I heard nothing but fantastic things, and I am so looking forward to being a part of the October event.
Well, I can't wait for you to be at the October event as well. And I was really, I mean it. I'm feeling, I get emotional almost thinking about it now that, I've kind of told you about my mother and my grandmother, and what they've done to trailblaze women. And I was getting to share that with you, and it really makes me think. And I said this at the event: how far women have come. From the time frame that, just one generation away, my mom to my grandmother's, that, my grandmother was married at 14 years old in arranged marriage to someone who was, a decade and a half older than her. And, coming from the beet fields of working in Nebraska, around Scottsbluff, Nebraska, to actually, having three kids that all have PhDs and graduated from college and, made a mark for themselves. And, and then, to me, I'm keeping up that standard. I may not be female, Lisa, but, my goal is to keep, what they have done alive and actually to share their story. And there was one part in there where I was looking at the camera, and I mean this, and I think you can agree with me. Don't let the stories die. My grandmother passed away at 96 years old about 3 years ago. And I remember speaking to the audience, and it was, like I said, a whole room of women, probably 100 of people at that point in time. And I looked up at that camera and I said, get their story now. Get them in front of the camera, because like me, we'd been talking about for 10 years. And guess what? The day never came. And we weren't able to get those words on camera. We weren't able to hear her story. So now we have to do it through other people. And it's so important to save those legacies. And that's why, I'm happy to have these events, because it is all about the stories, because each person in that room has a story. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on October 20th, 2022, so you can share your story. Which brings me to the part that I love. What I would like to do, and I do this with everyone who comes onto this channel first, I always like to ask, a little bit about your background, because I want to learn a little bit about you.
Sure. So, the whole of me, I am an only child. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and made my way to sunny Arizona. So my living life has been in the desert Southwest. And I, Robert, love these rainy days that we have in the Phoenix Valley, because they're so few and so far between. And even in the middle of the night when the thunder claps and I literally jump out of bed with a scream, I love this time of year here. So, I grew up with, honestly, parents that didn't really like each other very much and really probably shouldn't have been married. And I came into the world to save their marriage. And that is a horrible reason for any human being, any couple, to have a kid, is to try and save a bad marriage. But through all of that, and I love both of my parents dearly, I had my grandmother in my corner always, my granny. And for those of you who know me at all and know and have seen videos where I share the impact that she's had in my life, and some of the trials and tribulations of her elder years and health concerns really inspired me to launch my video podcast, Break Everything in Healthcare, because there are so many opportunities to treat people better. And all of that stems from, being with her in a hospital in February of 2020 with issues that were unknown, and fortunately had nothing to do with COVID at that point in time. But right, all of those things were starting to come into play, and we're in a hospital and she doesn't understand what's happening. And she doesn't understand the diagnostic language and the things in the treatment, and then, doctors disappearing forever and ever and ever. And so that very emotional time. And let me tell you, my horns came out, my fangs were
Mhm.
out. I was frothing at the mouth because it was so difficult to get information and understand what she was going through and what they were going to do to make her feel better. Um, that changed for me in my career and my trajectory some of the things that I really want to talk about, and the desire to be disruptive and to make an impact in the world around us to make things better. And
Well,
healthcare,
yeah,
was a good
and
place to start.
yeah, and I think sometimes when when you come to that point, and for me, you also feel a certain amount of mortality. And when we
Mm,
come to that point of mortality, we do start to think, have I utilized my gifts? Have I helped enough people? Have I made enough impact? You know, is my mom going to really look proud at me? And then also these other things are going on. Does she know who I am right now? Is the healthcare profession serving her? Why are we in this position? What are the things that, here I am, and I'm in this emotional place, and is insurance going to provide? Are the doctors making the right decision? Is the staff, caring for her when I'm not here? I imagine there's a lot of emotions, when you come to that pivotal point, and you start questioning things a little bit more, and it stops to pause you a little bit, doesn't it?
it does. And to take kind of the story forward, I spent end of life with her in the last
Mhm.
in May of this year. 93 years old and transitioning from being in a hospital to a hospice facility so that she could, go out with dignity and on
Mhm.
her terms, right? These experiences are awe-inspiring for the patient going through it, for family members who are saying goodbye, and to do these things with care and consideration and again, right, dignity is really important, and we don't always get it right. And
Mhm.
one of her last days was really bumpy, and that is so devastating, and it's so hard to go through that for a person who, right, is my hero. She is my role
Yeah.
model. She was in a bad marriage herself. She, raised 4 kids. She went through divorce. She moved on. She was a woman who was the owner of a trucking company in Michigan in the 1980s. How many women own trucking companies ever? Right? So she was a
Yes.
disruptor in her own right? Playing with the boys on their terms and growing in, a multi-million dollar business, a regional trucking company. So as we value these people in our lives, it's so important to take those moments. And Robert, you give the stage to people to share stories,
Mhm.
and it is important to get these on camera and to be able to say, my granny was a rock star in her own right, and challenged the status quo, was in an industry against the norms, much like your grandmother and your mother, right,
Mhm.
doing things that women weren't expected to do, and and blazing trails. And so I love talking about her.
And I'm you're remarkable to me, and why I'll say that you're so remarkable is, you know you come from a house, and I want to go back to your background and your upbringing. You come from a house, from what I understand, that did not have love. you know not in the purest sense of what we want to think, but yet, you know in your own way. And I've seen this happen many times, is a child will love one parent over the other, or they'll only have one parent to embrace and hold on to, so to speak. But one thing that I caught is, you in a way, you love both your parents, and you were able to separate, what maybe some of the things that they had going on with them, to actually treat them as their own entities, as their own equals, and not place blame on them. I think that that's remarkable, and I think that, you know what was it in you that allowed you to just create that space? Because that to me is incredible, because that's not often heard of.
Well, and I thank you for your generosity and how you've processed that. Part of it is the perspective of being a 50-year-old adult looking back. It probably was not all that great all through it. And I'll be really honest. There were years where I did not speak to my father. There were times
Okay.
when, my mother was a challenge. It wasn't easy. But where we are at
Yeah.
this point, as I am an adult, that I have helped raise two children who aren't mine, but they are part of my family today. And having adults, my parents who are now playing the role of grandparents. It is a journey. It wasn't seamless. It wasn't graceful, and I certainly was not generous in my teenage years, right? And well into my 20s, right? It was all, me, 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 and you guys are making my life more difficult than it needs to be. How dare you? Uh,
Right.
but right, so perspective and time make it easier to tell that story. And yeah, I absolutely do love both of my parents for who they are. Um, the good, the bad, the ugly, because we all have the good, the bad, the ugly.
And but and I am right there with you. I'm 57 years old, and my memories of my mom and my dad. I remember the day I found out that they were divorced at 7 years old. For me, it was the happiest day of my life. I felt like I could breathe freedom back into me again, and and I look back at that, and for as challenging and as for chaotic and as for just the seemingly pull of energy. I look back at my life too, and it reminds me it's the same way in business. It's not where you start out, it's really where you end up.
No,
And see,
absolutely.
and that's where I feel like how you help people. Yes, you help them in business, but I also think that you also help them in their beliefs. You know, and I watched a video, and you had this video. It's up on your website, and then please go to Lisa's website, and it talks about this epiphany, this turning point, this part of her life where she went from corporate to entrepreneur. And
Mhm.
tell us a little bit more. Elaborate on what I call the Charlie Brown message that you were getting from the CEO, and tell us a little bit deeper on why you were like, it's time.
Yeah. So the story that Robert's alluding to is available and you can watch it on my website, but it is the aha moment when I've decided that working in corporate, leading a project management team was no longer fulfilling my needs. It was soul draining,
Mm-hmm.
and it was supposed to be everything I'd ever wanted. The company was a startup. They were lighting up like a rocket ship. Everything was on a trajectory for amazing things. The unicorn, right? The IPO, all of that stuff. And while I was standing outside the building looking at it, I just was, it was hell. It was a horrible, awful place. And I'm sorry I just said that. But it was, everything about it just caused me pain, angst, and stress. And I had this epiphany of, at that moment in time, I was in my early 30s. I was not so recently divorced, but divorced and very
Right.
much in control of my own world. I have no children. And I had this opportunity to do whatever I wanted to do. And up until that moment in time, I would have and did describe myself as being risk averse, had always wanted a corporate job, wanted paid time off, wanted a 401k, wanted that opportunity for retirement, this perception of security that you got from all of that, which isn't really secure. And that's a fallacy, right? And a myth that just is not real. But in that moment, I decided that I could be a better consultant than anybody else, and that I could go and work with clients and help them with their business model and aligning what they want to do and putting the operating systems in place to do it well. I had in this last corporate environment watched a C-suite each bring in a consulting team. So there were little ducklings running amok everywhere at
Mm-hmm.
cross purposes, competing with each other billing millions of dollars annually, and the company itself was getting this kind of advice.
Yeah.
And it just infuriated me. And so in that moment, right, I'm going to open a consulting company.
And what's really interesting, and I'm going to go back to what you're saying because I was just talking about this within the last couple of days, and you touched on something. Sometimes we we have to self-discover certain things, and I was telling someone, I say sometimes being in corporate versus being an entrepreneur is like being in a family. Meaning, we can't pick our parents, we can't pick our
Mhm.
brothers and sisters, we can't pick our children, but you know what we have the ability to do is pick our partner.
Yeah.
And sometimes we haven't placed enough meaning on what that means to pick that partner. But in the same way, like what you're discovering, it's like all of a sudden, it's like when you go from corporate to being the entrepreneur, all of a sudden you have something that you didn't necessarily have before. And that's the ultimate voice and the ultimate control of choice, isn't it?
It is. And I still to this day describe myself as an accidental entrepreneur. That word sounds so big. Entrepreneur
Yeah,
sounds so big. And I don't know that I have, with Lcubed, created something that has, literally changed the world. I, make impact and, impressions along the way. But I, for some reason, entrepreneur feels very big. And so I still have a hard time with it. But it is the right word. It's what I did. But the idea of choosing to do business with people where our values align, where our mission aligns, and one of the most satisfying things in my business for me was the first time I fired a client.
yeah,
In a corporate environment, in a professional services environment, your clients, you've got them, you're stuck with them, you want the revenue, you want all of those things, and you have quotas to
right.
make in terms of billable hours and all of those things. In owning my own business and having a client who was abhorrent, he was a misogynist, he was a racist, he was just a disgusting human being. And to be able to say, thank you, but no thank you,
And
was so
and in that
reassuring.
moment, did you struggle with that at all?
Mm,
Because the first time I had to let go of a client myself, it was really hard.
yeah.
you know it
So
felt like I was, it was like, I had to, it was like a letdown to meltdown, kind of for me. And it's much easier now. It's like, bye bye, I'm okay. But that first time, what was in me like Velcro that was clinging me to it, like, why was I thinking, for me, like so much maybe outside success or something. It may be different for you, but that first time is different, isn't it?
it is. And so, the story, I'm working with a client. I
Hmm.
have a member of my team in the engagement with me. So there's two of us. And it's a Friday afternoon, and I'm getting ready to walk out of the building. And the client is walking through the lobby of the building, and he's big and he's brash and he's loud, and he screams across the lobby, "If you think you're leaving here before you tell me, whatever," and he blah, 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 blah,
Right.
blah, blah, "don't bother coming back on Monday."
Hmm.
And there's a handful of people, maybe a dozen people in the lobby listening to this, and I'm standing there. I am speechless, right? Cartoon moment, my chin is on the ground and oh my God. And I turned around and I went back into the workspace and I grabbed my employee and I said, it's Friday. We have fulfilled our obligation. Pack up your stuff. We're leaving.
Right.
We left, and the weekend I stressed all weekend long. I didn't
Mhm.
sleep. I was like, I didn't run up to his office and give him his briefing that he wanted. I walked out of the building. So, in effect, I'd already made the decision, right, of what was going to happen.
Right.
Monday morning, we went back in. I went to his office and I said, I am here to formalize. Here's, we're done. I'm
Hmm.
done. I'm taking my resource with me. Here are the reasons why. And, final invoice, goodbye. It took me all weekend to get to that point. But when I left and I was driving away, the euphoria that I felt, right? Because this person was toxic on every level
Yeah.
imaginable. And I'd been in that environment with him for 4 or 5 months at that point. Once I was no longer part of my reality, I felt amazing. And the next engagement that we signed up for was so totally different. The attitude, the alignment, the values, all of those things that I may have overlooked in that previous one because I wanted to sign the deal,
Right.
right? I have never second guessed my gut instinct on doesn't feel right. Oh yeah, if it doesn't feel right, I'm it's not happening.
Yeah, and you have a special gift, and I want to recommend a future proofing that's in the background right behind Lisa. It's her best-selling book. It's what made her an author, and then she also is with another book that my wife happens to be a part of, and that's Women That Lead. And you know, what I love is you have an understanding of something that my background is a little bit a part of, and it takes those three pillars. It takes people, it takes processes, and it takes technology. And
Mhm.
and like circles, almost like communities, like circles of color, they all overlap to a certain extent to exist and create a synergistic approach to movement. And whether you want to admit them to that or not, every organization has them. Heck, every family dynamic has them. you
Mhm.
know but it's what you chose, Lisa. And it really is interesting to me because in my field, when I was in marketing technologies or working in programming, there really wasn't a lot of women that chose, let's say, project management, and other endeavors as a part of what they did in their profession. Tell us, why was that your choice? And when did you really decide this is where I wanted to be, both corporate and what you do now, so you can look outside the box to help them sometimes inside that box?
So there are certain things I think that we have intrinsically in our person, right? I
Hmm.
am a systems thinker. I'm a logical, organized, plan something, do something, move on to the next thing. So my degree is in video production.
Hmm.
And when I graduated from college and found that I would be making less money than I would make at McDonald's working in my industry, I was like, what can I do with this skill set? And video production and project management are the same process. You plan something, you do it, you learn from it,
Yeah.
and you move on. So it was a very quick and easy flip. And information technology in the 1990s was the industry to be in. So it was very quick and very easy for me to make that connection. And
Right.
in the Phoenix Valley, Intel, Motorola, there were lots of places, big places where I could, start to do that work. So I knew that I could do that type of work just because that's how I'm wired. So then
Yeah.
learning the skills, getting certified, doing those pieces to make it credible was the natural following of that. But the puzzle, people, process, and then technology with future proofing, right? Our model, our adaptive transformation requires that we have skills and capabilities in organizations that are project management oriented, that are process management oriented,
Yeah.
that we know what and how to control our processes, our internal controls, and then organizational change management. Those are the four pillars that I hang everything on. And that organizational change portion, right? That's about the people experience
Hmm.
is the last one I always mention, but it's also the one that I think is ultimately the most important. And so it's kind of a save the best for last.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah, in organizational culture, I mean, and behavior, I mean, those things have always mattered to me, because actually our processes and our systems, even our technology follows that. I mean, quite frankly, and that's what we would build it for, to create some type of impact, to create some type of response, to create some type of, archiving, in retrieval, and, that is a part of my whole life. But see, you said something really quickly, and I can't believe a half an hour goes by so quick, because I knew this was going to happen. But what I really wanted to say here too is, the difference between photography and videography is immense. And a lot of people think that it's very similar, but it's not. And I say this because when I worked in Southern California, I actually, believe it or not, I did catering and event management, and so I helped put on weddings. And I remember the photographers made all the money, and I always remember the videographers did all the work. And one day a videographer told me, what the difference was, and he said this: a photographer captures a story, snap, but see, a videographer has to share a story. And I always will remember that. And the sharing is not the moment, but it's the whole process for it to make sense. And that's where that planning and the process, and then the output of showing that beautiful event in such a way, it matters. And it takes a lot of time. And so I totally understand, and I can see you being great. Now, as a consultant now, what in what ways do you offer your packages to companies and or individuals?
And so over time, what
Mhm.
we do has grown and changed. And so we have the ability to coach at a solopreneur, a startup, an emerging company, right? A smaller environment, because those four cornerstones are still critically important, but how you use them is very different than if you have 100 employees. So we have offerings, right, from a coaching perspective in the smaller space. And in the consulting side, right, larger organizations with teams of people, we have, larger engagements to tool whole practices around project management, process management, internal controls, and organizational change. And so the easiest way to start anything is a conversation with me. And let's just, talk about what you're doing, those things that keep you up at night as a leader in whatever your organization is. Because as we start to pull back to what the root cause is of those concerns, right, there are probably some fundamental skills and capabilities that we can help you bolster to get a good
I
night's
love
sleep,
that.
because that's
I
what's
love
important.
I love that. Everyone, I am here with Lisa Levy. She is a speaker, best-selling author, podcast host, and founder and CEO of Lcubed Consulting. You can contact her at 480-334-9562, or email her at lisa.levy@lcubedconsulting.com. I definitely find it fascinating that you talked about, you help people, with what keeps them up at night. But I think what you do gets you up in the morning. So I think that is the magic of your passion. And, besides the phone number and the email address that's scrolling across here, Lisa, what are other ways that people can find you?
The easiest way to find me is at lcubedconsulting.com, the website,
Okay.
or LinkedIn, Lisa L. Levy.
All right. Well, Lisa, it's been great having you on today. I mean, we could take up a whole show talking about some of the things that we covered. I'm looking forward to seeing you on 10/20/2022 at our next Unchained Women's Professional Conference, which will be virtual, so it will also have a global flair. Thank you so much for being on our show today. Have a great week. Thank you. All right. I was with Lisa L. Levy. She is a consultant, speaker, best-selling author, and podcast host. She's the founder, CEO of Lcubed Consulting. Just the conversation that I had with her, I just love. I get memorized. And I was like, okay, I got to keep moving this thing here. So sorry about that, everyone. I was just loving our conversation so much. I was getting immersed in it myself. I am so excited to bring on our next guest on the show. And her name is Ingrid Essawova-Frisby. I mean, she's added that last little piece of the name. I see her back there. She has her best-selling book, Shining in Honor. I love it. We're all amongst friends, authors, Romans, countrymen, however they say it. We're all here together. I'm going to put her information across here. She's a spiritual life recovery coach, intuitive, and founder and owner of Simply True. Please contact her at 818-800-8946 or email her at ingrid@simplytrue.com. Ingrid, how are you today?
I am well. Thank you, Robert, for having me on. So excited. Yay.
I am so excited that you're on here today, too. I'm going to give you cheers and a yay. Ingrid, what's interesting is we've known each other for a while, but we've never had to talk, too much about our personal lives, our personal existence. You see me with Sean, you see our kids come around. I've gotten to meet Scott, and I love that as well. But quite frankly, I don't know too much about where were you born or what your parents were like, and tell us a little bit about that background so we can learn a little bit more about Ingrid herself.
Oh my goodness, my pleasure. Well, it all started in a little village back in 1965 in Prague, and back then it was Czechoslovakia. So yeah, I'm an Eastern European gal. And I speak the language. I'm Czechoslovakian. I'm also part Nigerian as well. And my parents left during the Russian Revolution back in 1968. And we had a choice between Canada and US. My parents chose Canada because my dad didn't want to go to the Vietnam War. He was 19 back then, I think. So anyway, we were there for a while. We lived in Canada, Vancouver, and Toronto. Then I got married with my first marriage, and I moved to California, where I was there for about 25 years. And then I reside here in lovely Arizona for the past 5 years, I would say. Meanwhile, I'm doing the math really quick. Like, does that all add up to be 57? Yeah. Okay. Pretty much.
And we're embracing you here. We're embracing you here. And especially with the showers and the humidity, I have to admit, I love it. I probably would hate it if I had it all the time, but we have so much sun here. We have sun to spare, don't we? And, right now, a little bit of rain. My garden is loving it. And all of a sudden it's just sprouting and growing and saying, "Hey, Dad, we're loving you right now. Keep it coming." So,
well,
but Ingrid,
you know what, Robert? I have a cute little tradition, and I love rituals. So when I just got married, which was back in March of just a few months ago, we bought a cute little cactus. And I said, this cactus will be a representation of our life, Scotty. That cactus was a foot high. I am not kidding you. That thing right now is 4 feet.
What? It's a cactus. It's supposed to be an inch a year, not a foot a quarter.
Miracle-Gro.
Oh my gosh, that is too much. But I really want to talk about it. Czechoslovakia. Now it's the Czech Republic. No, I want to go back to Czechoslovakia just a little bit in Prague. And one of the things I always like to say, for so long there was this for people that are my age, I'm 57, I know all about the Iron Curtain and the Cold War and the way that media kind of shut out all of Eastern Europe. And it really is a shame, because Eastern Europe there's a lot of foundation of just, beautiful cathedrals and languages and literature, and even, the culture of sports and learning and the trade routes. I've always been so interesting, and I remember when Czechoslovakia broke up, it went into the Czech Republic and then the
Mhm.
Slavic country. And and it was never meant to be a whole country. And I think it's more in its kind of founding areas. And and I say that because one of the things that Czechoslovakians are known for as well is really having a deep understanding and appreciation of their environment. And and that's one of the things that I love about you is you talk about things, and when you bring up um, from spirituality to mental health to a physical well-being, etc. I can see that kind of foundation even from where you were born, and and how you grew up. you know in your early childhood, did you have any mentors or heroes that you looked up to that helped craft or create yourself back when you were young?
Robert, I didn't. And I'm an only
mm.
child. And
So
being
we
a child with, well, I guess we're all immigrants, but my parents truly didn't know the language.
hmm
Their marriage alone was quite rocky. So they went to the fact that we fled with just, the clothes on our back. And I think maybe we had one suitcase. And my mom leaving, her parents that she loved so much. I was pretty much in isolation till about a teenager. So I had a lot of time with myself and my friends, my imaginary friends, where now I know they really weren't imaginary
well it,
because
well
I'm
it,
an intuitive.
yeah
Was able to have a really good relationship with myself even back then. So I was brought up very, very, very strictly. I mean, I couldn't date until I was about 24. Little did they know. And just very strict, couldn't play with friends until I was a teenager. So I really, I just really can't believe I am the person that I am today. Like,
well
how on earth did I get away from all that?
and I think it's really interesting to me because I have this saying. I say it's like there's nature, nurture, and your noodle. So yeah, those are the three things that make a person. And I do believe that where we're born, and even kind of like where we're growing up, it's not just the energy of like our bio parents. It's actually there's an energy of the surrounding area that we also absorb. And like I said, I think that the Czech Republic, in that area, has a deep, rich tradition. And then for so many years, us as Americans really didn't get to deeply understand that, tradition and the wealth of knowledge and the culture that was there. And so I'm just going to say that you picked up some of it that way and you brought it over here. But it's also interesting to me because I'm an only child. Lisa, who was on the show earlier, is an only child, and you're an only child as well. And and in certain ways, you know, in our own way, we really had to develop, a certain self of sense and a certain communication, both internal and external, to kind of manifest in our childhoods, because mine was kind of rocky early on. Lisa was kind of rocky early on, and you might take the cake in having the rockiest, it sounds like, the relationship, because not only did you have parents that may not have been holistic, as we would say in this generation, but you were
Mhm.
fleeing a country, you know, and in fleeing that country, let me ask you this question. What were you learning? And what do you apply from all that you learned from fleeing from something?
Well, Robert, I was really young. I was 3 years
Uh-huh.
old. I mean, I
Okay.
do remember the day when we left and we were in line and stuff like that. I think that my memory more was in Canada and in Alberta, and then Vancouver and Toronto, and and how it really shaped my parents. I just think that, when you are from a culture like an Eastern European or European parents, just that culture alone of the do's and the don'ts and the expectations. I mean, each culture has its niche, right? And I
Mhm.
think it's like those values would have been a lot easier to grow up in if I was in Czechoslovakia. Whereas when you bring, like, if you have other cultures, like an Indian culture or an Asian culture, I mean, it's just a little bit harder when you come here to Canada, to US, and to acclimate in that culture where everyone else is not doing that. And what do you mean you can't come over to a birthday party? What do you mean you can't do this? You can't do that? And you're very much isolated. So that was more of my experience as a young child. And I think everything changed in Toronto. You actually have a grade 13, which is equivalent to the first year of college. And not until then, which is what, 17, 18, did my life really, really changed from there by, using my voice, standing up for myself, because, well, even though I lived at home and still was very strict, I was still able to do a lot more things. And I met really great new friends that I had for 30, 40 years.
And it's something that I didn't necessarily have when I grew up. When I grew up, my dad and my mom divorced. I was telling Lisa, I said, for me, that was like the best day of my life, because I felt like I wasn't in a battleground.
Right.
And one of the things that I wrote in one of the books, one of the Art of Connection books, is like Lisa, I loved my dad and I loved my mom. I just didn't love them together. They were both
Correct.
very powerful people and wonderful people that really have given me a lot in my life. But together, it was kind of close to hell, for
Yeah,
me.
exactly.
And then,
That's why
and
they
then,
divorced.
yeah, absolutely. And so for me, I always say that was like one of the best days of my life, and I never wanted them together. I hear kids,
Of course.
they wish
It's
their
not
their
always a
parents were
fit.
together. It is not always a fit. And the other thing that I also remember is I grew up in a different way. Like when I was in Omaha, Nebraska, when we were living there for a while, it was like everyone was very, very white and everyone was very, very black. And then with my skin tone, I was like the one brownie of the bunch. And I always kind of felt out of place from the physical realm. And it's so interesting to me, because sometimes it's like maybe an emotional realm kind of separates you out. Sometimes it's like a dictated realm, like the parents.
Yeah,
Sometimes
I
it's
absolutely hear what you're saying, Robert,
yeah,
because
like a
I
physical.
experience similar, because I'm a very, very tall girl. And back
Yeah.
then, I was much taller.
Yeah.
And also having
Yeah.
darker skin and being so tall and being more mature and developed, and then having the skills that I had, which was so different. So I hear you.
Yeah, and it's like, and having friends, but it was also you still like, probably looking, in your place. And that's what I love about you now, because the thing is what you understand, at least for me, is you understand and you help, you point even, for people to kind of recover themselves, recover some of the pieces and parts that may get fragmented over time. Because if we don't learn to rely on, us, and we don't notice, it's like a ship being off course. We get off course. And one of the things that I like to say is you help, manifest the course to come back to home, so to speak. And you have a
Correct.
really interesting title, which is a spiritual life recovery coach. And and I'm still understanding that. Can you let our audience know what that is, so we can better understand, how you utilize your gifts?
Wonderful. Absolutely. Well, let's actually break it down. The
Okay.
spiritual part of it is not a religious part. It's
Mhm.
an in because religion is a group journey and a spirituality is an individual journey. And the each individual is so unique, and so is the journey. Um so therefore I have some tools, some information that can put the pieces together spiritually in terms of why certain things happen. There's many of my clients call me a forensic spiritual recovery coach
Right.
because I can absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, identify through the emotional, the mental, the physical, and the energetic why certain things have happened, are happening. And we bring in with the past lives and current life as well. So that's with the spiritual. Let's take a look at the next part, which is the life recovery. Whenever we think of life recovery, sometimes people go straight to either if there's an addiction or if there is a death. And honestly, I have a belief, especially doing the work, making sure that I walk the walk and talk the talk and do my own journey before I went out to assist other people, is understanding that we go through changes on a daily basis. And we go through betrayals, through shame, guilt, self-judgment, and also we go through death. And these are changes. And when these are changes, no matter how small or how large, we have to heal our hearts and we have to manage our minds simultaneously so we can heal that wound and go forward. Because if we don't, here's a change, and then on top of it is another layer of another change that just happened, and another one, and another one, and another one. And I'm talking about when you're kicked off a team, or suddenly you're moving, and you're moving across state. Like, all of these are changes, or change in a friendship, in a relationship. And then what about big things? A divorce, parents divorcing. Yeah. We're constantly going through change, and we somehow are not taught growing up in high school and even with our parents how to manage and navigate these changes. And then we are left with what we are left with today, which is, the increase of the mental health industry. They're swamped. I mean, they're booked months ahead of time because so much help is needed. And then the very last part is that I'm an intuitive. So because I've done my work, because I am blessed no longer to have my wounds, I'm able to connect to myself and be in silence. So I am able to use more of my skills and have downloads so I can have more information, not only for myself, but also for my clients. And that's pretty much in a nutshell.
Well, but yeah, and in that nutshell, it really gets bigger because, I had someone tell me one time, they said, you want to scale your business. They said, why don't you scale your life first? And it was really interesting to me because, we're, an entrepreneurial group of entrepreneur people ask me, is there a place for spiritual wellness? And I'm like, how can we not have spiritual wellness in this place? And it really made me think about the coach who told me, about scaling the business. It's like your business only will grow as large as you scale your life, And, and I kind of remember thinking, I told my kids, I said, sometimes it's like blankets come falling and they get heavier and heavier and heavier. You get to the point of not moving anymore, and I tell entrepreneurs, the reason why you work with Ingrid is she helps you liberate yourself in a certain manner of fact. She helps you release, many things. And so, yeah, she may not be working on your business like looking for a target client or setting up a CRM, but what she's doing is she, in a certain way, she's helping you scale the sometimes the internal battle and scars that entrepreneurs may also have over years of doing business. Would I be somewhat correct in saying that?
Well, absolutely, because we have to understand that we are walking billboards, and everything is energy, including ourselves. So when we are in our head about a personal matter or even a professional matter, there's a vibe that we put out. And do you know how much that affects our business? It's our mindset. So our thoughts, our words, our actions, that is energy. We have to understand that we attract what we are. So if you're in your head and you're thinking about, your spouse, about that conversation that you had last night, and it all sort of went this way and that way, and something's happening with the home, and then the parents are coming in, and you are speaking to potential clients, or you're speaking to vendors, or you want to attain a business, and get understand that it's so crucial to honestly start at home first.
Yeah.
It makes all the difference in the world, because people aren't stupid. They're really, really smart. They can pick up on you, and the competition is fierce out there. They can go and pick another financial person, or another real estate person, or another. There's many. What makes one person different than the other? It's
Yeah.
their energy. It's how light they are, or yes, it is knowledge. But at the end of the day, it's about relationships, and it's about connections. So how are you supposed to connect with someone when you yourself are, in a sense, heavy in your thoughts and in your burdens?
Y- Yeah, I mean, if you yourself are disconnected, it does make it harder. And another thing that I even learned from you in a short period of time is, you know, how do you know yourself, right? How do you know yourself? The acceptance and the conversation and that connection and that ability to entrain and cast energy if you don't make time for yourself as well. And I think that that's what I love about you is you challenge people to slow down, so they can find themselves again. It's like we can be connected to ourselves, and we can also be disconnected to ourselves. And what I found, when I hear you speak, to me, it's like in front of the entrepreneur community, what you're saying is like, look, I am here to not make life burdenous. I'm here to make life free flowing and wonderful and beautiful again, to capture that radiant spirit that we all are, and not to make each and every moment drudgery, but fun again. And that's what
Exactly.
and that's what I see, when you talk. And then the other thing that I've noticed too is you have a certain, like, pillar of strength as well, to challenge kindly. And I love that about you too. you and that takes a beautiful
Did you talk
sense
to my husband, Scotty, lately?
to challenge kindly. So, I really want to I want to talk about your business, because I want people to know about Simply True. I want people to know about the Urban Wellness Center, and I want people to know about the workshops, and seminars that you bring to enlightened people. Tell us a little bit about the secret sauce of Ingrid and what you offer.
Absolutely. I would love to share with you the secret sauce, and thank
Woo!
you. So, one of the things that, I promised myself that I wasn't going to do and go into business and give advice to people unless if I did it myself.
Mhm.
So, being a problem solver and a troubleshooter in the corporate world for over 35 years, I simply bled these skills into my personal life when there was one challenge after another. And
Mhm.
mostly, people think it's too painful to deal with your problems. It's actually painful not to. So, I created a program called the Emotional Boot Camp, and that is the meat and potatoes of my program here at Simply True. It is taking one topic, answering 22 questions, and at the end of 2 or 3 hours, that level of pain and heartache is gone, guaranteed.
Wow.
And of course, that took 20 years to create, and I was the guinea pig along with my children. Of course, why would you have children unless if they're guinea pigs too?
That's right.
So anyway, that is the meat and potatoes. And around the meat and potatoes, we have the gravy, right? And the gravy are the
Mhm.
sessions that we have, whether they're once a week, once a month, and we learn how to connect to ourselves. We properly get educated on truth, of what the truth is that we are led to believe since young children.
Mhm.
And we put the pieces together and customize your spiritual journey that fits you so you can be yourself 100%. We have individual sessions. We have, as you had saying, clinics and workshops of different topics within connecting to self, so you can truly heal those wounds and be connected to yourself, be in the presence. And my clients are loving it. I'm loving it. I'm doing my purpose. And that is what I do day to day with love and light. And also, I have a church. I created a new church where it's time to stand in the power of you. And it's because the closer you are connected to yourself, the closer you're connected to source. And that happens every week as well. So between the book, which you can get on Amazon, and yes, it's a bestseller. It's called The Emotional Dictionary to the Soulful Self. Finally, a dictionary for emotions. You can look it up, alphabetically. Well, not alphabetically, but
Close
you
enough.
look it up and you get the answers in your fingertips. It's all bullet pointed written because nobody has time really to go and read. You need answers and you need them now. So between the book, the seminar, the clinics, the sessions, the program, the church, I'm a really happy, busy camper. Did I tell you I'm married? Yeah, okay.
Yes, you are. Yep. There's somewhere in there we heard that. So Ingrid, again, I'm with Ingrid Essawova-Frisby, a spiritual life recovery coach, intuitive, and founder and owner of Simply True. Please contact her at 818-800-8946 or email her at ingrid@simplytrue.com. Ingrid, are there other ways that people can find you or get a hold of you through this digital universe?
You know what? You said it perfectly. Simplytrue.com. Simplytrue.com.
Well, Ingrid, I am so thankful and grateful that you were on the show today and you showed up as it meant to be. So, thank you so much. I hope you have a great and wonderful week. Until next time, I say we find some time to do this again.
Sounds good to me. Blessings to all.
Have a great week. I was just with Ingrid Essawova. She is the founder and CEO of Simply True, or owner and founder. It's like me. My wife makes up all these different names for me, but I'll take any of them. So Ingrid, just take what I'm giving you. You can contact her at simplytrue.com. She's a wonderful person. I want to remind everyone that we are here each week, Thursday from 2:30 to 3:30 PDT. That's Pacific time. So if you're San Diego, Los Angeles, any of those time frames, we're on the same time because we're in that crazy state of Arizona where we're the Mavericks, where our time never stops because we don't have daylight savings time. Everyone, make it a great week. And until next time, next Thursday, I will see you again. Thank you.
You've been watching the iNetrepreneur Show, a production of the iNetrepreneur Radio Network with host Robert W. Jones. Join Robert each week as he visits with new and exciting guests who inspire, teach, and mentor entrepreneurs worldwide. Follow Robert each Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and 8:30 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time.